No, you guys talk about mental health, obviously, and that's why also we are friends and fans of each
Yeah.
other's work. We share tips, we share accountability, we will reach out in moments of self-doubt and second
Yes.
guessing. And so the Waffle Shop podcast is tremendously important for that. And so please tell us more about that. How did it start? Where did we know that the title, where it came up from, but
Yeah.
why a podcast and why in February?
So it was actually born from a real, probably a rock bottom moment for me. So as I mentioned, like I was raised by women, like I live with my younger sister. So, you know, 3 years ago, I was in a situation where my mum was very poorly. Like she had an operation on her back, which went wrong. So basically what had happened was the spinal fluid at the bottom of her spine was leaking. So, she was at home, she was very delirious. She was, she didn't really recognize me or my sister. So we got her to hospital and they're like, oh, okay, we just need to drain the fluids and then she should be okay. So I came home. My sister was actually starting her exams the next day. So came home, got everything ready. And then the day after I was going back up the hospital, but like got my sister off to school to start her exams. But then when I got to the hospital, they were like, we need to make a decision in regards to your mum's brain. And it was from that moment, it was it was just complete and utter heartbreak. Um, the the fluid had travelled up her spine and caused a blockage, which then starved the brain of oxygen. Which then, they were saying words like brain dead, and she's not going to make it. The chance of her living are very, very slim. So it's still quite tough for me to talk about those kind of situations because I'm still dealing with it on a daily basis.
Of course.
But then what followed that was, you know, months of being in intensive care and, being by my mum's side, just saying, squeeze my hand, to no response. They sat us down and to basically had the conversation with us to say, there's nothing more we can do with turning the life support machine off. But at that time, my sister was in the middle of her exams, and I remember being in the corridor and saying to the surgeon who was looking after my mum, saying, like, just please, for my sister's sake, don't do this in the middle of her exams. Just like give it a few more days. And thankfully, like he agreed. He was like, okay, I want the date of your sister's last exam, but unfortunately, there is nothing more we can do. So they got to a stage where they turned the machine off, and the stubborn cow started breathing by herself. And then it literally just, I was like, okay, we've got a chance here. We weren't out of the woods at all, but she was breathing by herself. She then left intensive care and she just went from strength to strength.
Mm.
She's now in a rehabilitation home in like close to where we live, basically learning how to talk, how to use her hands and everything again. So we're incredibly lucky that we still have our mom in some capacity. I mean, she's incredibly stubborn. Well, it's where, me and my sister get it from. But for me, because I went from watching my mom, literally, who was my only parent, my only kind of support network, to be so vulnerable and then to kind of be next of kin, making, all these decisions and having these tough conversations, to then practically becoming a dad to my younger sister and taking that kind of responsibility, taking over a house, which in itself, as you know, is a lot of work. And then to go through to try and keep my career going, which looking back at the time, it was all like, oh, Taylor's handling this really well. He's doing great. He's getting through this, that, and the other. But what was actually happening, I was completely ignoring the fact that I was grieving for someone who wasn't dead.
Yeah.
I hadn't handled the traumatic side of things. And it's a word now that I completely still underestimate, is the trauma of it all. like even now, like if my phone rings or like I don't know the number, I go back to that place of like something bad's going to happen. And then Christmas of this year, my mum was in hospital again with pneumonia. She was really poorly, and again we were sat down by a doctor in one of those tiny little rooms and told, this is it, there's nothing more we can do. But then she did it again. She pulled through, and then it got to a stage with me, was like I couldn't do it anymore. Like it had chipped away so much of me, and like it took so much out of me that probably it's not selfish, because it's, you know, it's something that I look back on now and I'm incredibly proud of, but like I just didn't want to continue living my life the way it was going. And I was scared, like all the emotions of the past 3 years had hit me at once, and I was ready to give up. I just couldn't give any more. And then I'm incredibly lucky with the support network that I have and with my little sister. And they noticed it. They pulled me up on like a few things and just said like, look, things aren't right. And, you know, I went for a beer with one of my best friends and I just said, I can't do it anymore. And everything just came out. It was just a weight had been lifted, because I was having that kind of, I was admitting defeat. And as men, and even some incredibly strong women, it's something that we don't want to do. We don't want to admit defeat, but I had nothing left to give. So that was a turning point. And then I started having therapy sessions, but then COVID happened. So then my therapy sessions had to come to an end. So it was either run the risk of slipping back into that frame of mind and going backwards once, you know, the ball was rolling, I was opening up, or put more pressure on myself and start a podcast. So I started a podcast.
Because why not?
Because why not? That's exactly what I needed, was more pressure and more stress.
No, but it's a lifesaver, I think. I find it.
100%.
Right.
Completely. Like, and it's so kind of cheesy to say, but I think it has saved my life. It has completely gave me a new lease of life. It's given me a new direction, and the opportunity it's given me is it's made me realize like I'm not on my own. Like I'm not the only one who's going through the struggles, the anxieties, the, you know, the depression, the PTSD. There is so many different out there from all different walks of life, feeling the same emotions that I'm feeling, like even like on a daily basis. And that's something that I didn't realize until I reached out. You know, the podcast, you know, it blew up in a way that I wasn't expected. The support came flooding in, and it was almost that kind of realization that I should have done this sooner. But I had to get to that rock bottom point. I had to be at that point for me to want to change. And like even go back to like the elevator analogy, like I was literally on the ground floor ready to go lower, and I was like, no, you know, it was time to sort things out, I think. So yeah, the Waffle Shop was born, and it's been the best thing that's ever happened to me.
I say the same thing. Yeah, I say the same thing of mine as well. Even today, I was texting with a friend and saying it saves my life every single day. Yeah. And it sounds cheesy and corny, but it's true. Yeah, the possibilities 100%. just expand, and you find a community, you find people, definitely. Like-minded people.